King Corvus. They called him the Just. Once, now only whispers coated in fear. His eyes, once bright, were clouded, reflecting the storm within. A storm of suspicion, of hatred, of madness. He saw enemies everywhere. In every shadow, a dagger. In every smile, a lie. The crown, a serpent, coiled tighter each day, crushing his sanity. He trusted no one, least of all women. Their gentleness, a weakness. Their strength, an affront. He saw treachery in their eyes, a reflection of his own poisoned heart. They were the root of all evil, the serpent's whisper, the harbinger of chaos. His fear, a festering wound, demanded a sacrifice. One by one, his advisors fell silent, their pleas for reason falling on deaf ears. They saw the abyss that beckoned, the chasm of madness swallowing their king whole. But fear was a powerful silencer. The court, once a place of lively debate and wise counsel, became a tomb of hushed whispers and averted gazes. The king, alone in his paranoia, was a king no more. He was a prisoner of his own making, a puppet dancing to the tune of his own twisted fears. He ruled, but his reign was a reign of terror, a prelude to the darkness that was to come. A darkness that even he, in his madness, could not have foreseen. "They are the enemy within," he rasped, voice hoarse with suspicion. His court, a sea of bowed heads, listened with feigned obedience and growing unease. The king's gaze darted around the room, searching for any sign of dissent, any flicker of defiance. His grip on the arms of his throne tightened, knuckles white as bone. Their soft whispers poison the minds of men. Their very existence is a threat to our kingdom's strength. They must be purged. The words hung in the air, heavy with malice and dread. A collective gasp escaped the courtiers, followed by a stifling silence. The king saw their hesitation as confirmation. Confirmation of the conspiracy he had woven in his mind, a tapestry of paranoia and delusion. He saw their silence not as fear of his wrath, but as agreement with his twisted logic. The seed of madness, once a tiny sprout, had blossomed into a monstrous, all-consuming weed. He would show them strength. He would show them what it meant to defy him. He would make them understand that their king, their protector, was also their judge, jury, and executioner. He would be their savior, even if it meant becoming their doom. The decree echoed through the city streets, carried by the wind and the cries of terrified women. Doors were broken down, homes invaded. Mothers were torn from their children, wives from their husbands. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The king's word was law, absolute and unquestionable. The sky, as if reflecting the city's despair, turned a bruised, bloody red. The sun, a fiery eye, watched impassively as the women were herded through the city gates like cattle. Their dignity, their lives deemed worthless, a sacrifice to the king's insanity. Among the courtiers, the whispers grew louder, bolder. Disgust mingled with fear, forming a potent cocktail of rebellion. The king, they realized, was no longer the man they once knew. He was a tyrant, a monster of his own creation. The serpent's crown had crushed his mind, leaving behind a hollow shell of paranoia and rage. The seeds of betrayal, sown in the fertile ground of fear and resentment, began to sprout. The king, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface, remained lost in his self-constructed labyrinth of delusion. He was blind to the cracks appearing in his facade, deaf to the murmurs of dissent that echoed through the palace halls. He paced his chamber, a caged animal. Sleep, once a refuge, was now a tormentor, haunted by visions of betrayal and deceit. Every face, every whisper, echoed his deepest fear. The fall of his kingdom, the shattering of his illusion of control. He saw enemies everywhere, even in his own reflection. The walls, once symbols of his power, now felt like the bars of a prison. A prison of his own making, built on the foundations of his own paranoia. The silence of the palace, once comforting, now screamed of conspiracy. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of fabric, sent his heart racing with suspicion. His advisors, once trusted confidants, were now kept at a distance, their words suspect, their motives questioned. He surrounded himself with shadows, with men whose loyalty could be bought and sold like cheap wine. But even their presence offered little comfort. They were shadows, yes, but shadows could be deceiving, hiding their true intentions behind a veil of feigned obedience. The king, in his quest for security, had built walls not around his city, but around his heart. Walls of suspicion, of fear, of madness. Walls that kept out not just his enemies, but also any semblance of reason, any possibility of redemption. He was alone, utterly and completely alone in his self-imposed exile, and he didn't even realize it. The drums of war echoed across the plains, a deep rhythmic thrum that sent shivers down the spines of even the most battle-hardened soldiers. The enemy, a nomadic tribe with vengeance in their hearts and fire in their eyes, had arrived at the city gates. Their leader, a woman scorned, carried the banner of retribution, a stark reminder of the king's cruelty. Panic erupted within the city walls. The people, already burdened by fear and resentment, saw the approaching army as a harbinger of their doom. The king, his eyes blazing with a manic light, saw it as confirmation of his paranoia, the ultimate betrayal. The city gates, once symbols of strength and security, crumbled under the relentless assault. The enemy surged through the breach, a tide of fury and vengeance. The king, his mind teetering on the precipice of madness, rallied his remaining forces for a final desperate stand. But his commands were met with hollow obedience, their hearts no longer in the fight. The king, betrayed by his own madness, his own cruelty, stood alone amidst the ruins of his kingdom. The city, once a beacon of prosperity and hope, lay in ruins, a testament to the devastating consequences of unchecked power and unyielding paranoia. His legacy, once etched in gold, was now written in blood and ash. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence descended upon the city, broken only by the mournful cries of ravens circling overhead. The streets, once bustling with life and laughter, were now littered with the debris of battle and the stench of death. The king was gone, his fate a mystery, his name erased from the annals of history. The city, once a jewel of the ancient world, became a ghost town, a haunting reminder of the price of madness. Its once proud towers crumbled into dust, swallowed by the encroaching desert sands. The stories of its fall, passed down through generations, became a cautionary tale, a whispered warning against the perils of unchecked power and the corrosive nature of fear. The women, exiled by the king's decree, eventually found refuge in distant lands, their descendants carrying the scars of his cruelty. But even in their exile, the memory of their lost home lingered, a bittersweet ache in their hearts. The city of Corvus, a victim of its own king's madness, became a silent testament to the enduring power of fear, a stark reminder that even the mightiest of kingdoms can crumble under the weight of their own paranoia. Its ruins, a desolate graveyard of ambition and despair, stand as a warning to all who dare to wield power without compassion, to rule with fear instead of wisdom.